It was an ordinary Thursday morning, the kind that slipped quietly into routine without asking for attention. The sun had been kind that day, soft light spilling across the kitchen counter, warming the rim of a mug half filled with coffee gone cold. I had spent the early hours sweeping the porch, straightening the bookshelves, and humming to myself as an old tune drifted through the house. The air smelled faintly of pine cleaner and something nostalgic, like memory itself had found a way to live in the walls. My granddaughter Lily had school as usual. She was supposed to come by after classes like every Thursday. We had a small ritual, cookies, tea, and the kind of conversation that drifts easily between laughter and silence. I was setting the table when the phone rang. Her teacher's calm voice told me Lily had stayed behind to finish an art project. I didn't think much of it. She was a quiet soul, the kind of child who'd lose track of time sketching sunsets or building tiny worlds in the corners of her notebooks. Still, as the house settled into its hush, I felt a peculiar awareness of the quiet. No footsteps, no faint hum of her voice in the next room. Just stillness, and the low whisper of wind slipping through the trees outside. By the time she arrived, the afternoon light had shifted to gold, the sun spilling long, sleepy rays through the lace curtains. Lily came through the door with her backpack hugged tightly against her chest, cheeks rosy from the autumn breeze. "Grandpa," she said, pausing in the doorway, her voice carrying an unusual weight. "Can I stay a little longer today? There's something I want to tell you." Something about the way she said it, the tremble under her words, the way her eyes didn't quite meet mine, made me stop what I was doing. I nodded slowly and motioned to the old armchair by the window. "Of course, sweetheart. Let's sit a while." We settled into the familiar corner of the living room, the place where time always seemed to soften. Dust motes floated lazily in the sunlight, the faint aroma of tomato soup drifting in from the kitchen. She toyed with the zipper of her backpack for a long moment before finally speaking. "Grandpa," she whispered, "I think I figured out something important about you. About us." Her voice cracked slightly, fragile but determined. I leaned in without a word, sensing that whatever she was about to say mattered more than either of us yet realized. "You always make me feel like I belong," she said finally. "Even when I mess up. Even when the world feels too big. When I'm here with you, I feel safe." I felt something shift in my chest, a tenderness I hadn't expected. Not because her words were dramatic, but because they were so sincere, so unguarded. I reached out and rested my hand over hers. "Lily," I murmured, "that's the most beautiful thing you could ever tell me. You matter more to me than you'll ever know. You bring light into this old house." She smiled, a shy, genuine curve that seemed to brighten the room. For a while, we sat in silence, hands resting together, hearts speaking in the language that doesn't need sound. Later, when it was time for her to go, I watched her walk down the path toward the fading sunset. The air was cool, tinged with the scent of fallen leaves. As her small figure disappeared past the gate, I felt an ache that wasn't sadness exactly, just the awareness of love so full it almost hurt to hold. That night, long after the house had gone still, I found myself replaying her words. They echoed softly in my mind. "You make me feel like I belong." I realized then that love doesn't always announce itself in grand gestures. Sometimes it's just presence. A listening ear. A quiet house made warmer by laughter. The next day came wrapped in pale morning light. I brewed my coffee slower than usual, letting the sound of the kettle fill the quiet. For some reason, I couldn't stop thinking about her, how she had spoken, what had stirred in her heart that made her open up like that. That afternoon, she showed up again. The sky was the color of amber glass, and a few dry leaves chased each other down the driveway. She stood at the porch for a moment before knocking, eyes distant, as if she were still lost in thought. "Grandpa," she said softly. "Can I talk to you again?" "Always," I replied, stepping aside to let her in. She took her usual seat by the window, shoulders slightly hunched, hands folded neatly in her lap. There was something new in her eyes, uncertainty mixed with courage. "Yesterday," she began, "when I said you make me feel like I belong, I meant it. But I also meant something else. Sometimes I feel invisible. At school, in crowds, even with friends. It's like I'm there, but no one really sees me. Except you." Her words were like a small stone dropped into still water, gentle, but the ripples reached deep. I took her hand again, feeling the small tremor that ran through her fingers. "Lily," I said quietly, "I see you. Every part of you. The brave parts. The shy parts. The pieces that doubt themselves. You're never invisible here," she blinked, tears gathering but not falling. "Do you really mean that?" "With all my heart," I said. "You don't have to be loud to be seen, love. You just have to be true." For the next hour, we talked about her drawings, her favorite books, the small science fair coming up, and then slowly about deeper things. About the times she wanted to speak up but didn't, about friends who forgot to include her. About the way she sometimes pretended to be fine because it felt easier than explaining. I didn't rush her. I just listened, offering silence when silence was what she needed. At one point, she looked up, her eyes glistening in the last rays of sun. "Grandpa," she said, "I like it here. I mean, I really like being with you. It feels like breathing after holding my breath all day." My chest tightened again, filled with a kind of love that felt both fragile and unbreakable. "And I love having you here," I told her softly. "You make this house feel alive." She smiled then, that small, brave smile that seemed to say everything words couldn't. And in that moment, I realized these weren't just conversations. They were lessons for both of us. She was learning how to trust, and I was learning what it means to listen. The days that followed carried a rhythm of quiet visits and gentle revelations. Every afternoon, Lily would show up with a new story, a new thought, a question that reached beyond her years. And every time, we'd find ourselves sitting in that same corner, sunlight drifting through the curtains, hearts meeting in the stillness. One afternoon, she arrived later than usual. The sky was streaked with tangerine light, and she lingered by the door, her face shadowed with thought. "Grandpa," she began, "there's something I need to say, and I think it's important." I nodded, setting aside the crossword puzzle I'd been pretending to work on. "Go on." "Sweetheart," she took a breath, her voice trembling just slightly. "Sometimes I feel like I don't fit anywhere. I try so hard, but I always end up feeling like I'm watching everyone else live their lives, and I'm just behind the glass." I leaned forward, my heart aching for her. "Oh, Lily," I said gently, "you fit more than you know. The world just hasn't caught up to your heart yet. You have a light that doesn't need permission to shine." She looked down, fiddling with her bracelet. "You really think so?" "I know so," I said. "And that feeling you have, that sense of not fitting, it's what helps you see the world differently. That's not a flaw, love. That's a gift." Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to say more but couldn't find the words. Then, almost in a whisper, she said, "You make me feel brave, Grandpa. I don't know why. It's like, when I talk to you, I can say anything." I reached across and took her hands in mine. "That's what trust feels like. It's not about being fearless. It's about knowing you're safe enough to be afraid and still speak." She nodded, her eyes soft with relief. "I think I understand now." We sat there for a long time, the house breathing around us. The ticking clock, the faint whistle of wind through the eaves. It all seemed to join in the rhythm of our hearts. That evening, after she left, I stood by the window and watched her walk down the path, her hair catching the last light of day. And I thought about how courage isn't something we hand down. It's something we help each other find. A few days later, she showed up again, this time quieter than usual. She slipped through the door and placed her backpack on the floor before sitting down at the kitchen table. "Grandpa," she said, her voice low, "can we talk? Like really talk?" I dried my hands on a towel and nodded. "Of course." She hesitated, then spoke in a whisper that trembled at the edges. "I've been thinking about everything you said. About being brave and being seen. And I think I finally get it. I don't have to change to fit in. I can be me, even if the world doesn't notice right away." I felt tears prick my eyes, pride swelling quietly inside me. "That's exactly right," I said. "Being yourself is the bravest thing a person can do. The rest will follow," she smiled faintly. "You always say the right thing, Grandpa." "Maybe," I said, chuckling softly. "Or maybe I just say what your heart already knows." She reached across the table then, her small hand resting on mine. "Thank you," she said, her eyes shining. "For listening. For not fixing everything, for just being here." I squeezed her hand gently. "That's what love does, Lily. It listens. It holds." It waits. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the horizon in layers of rose and gold. The light caught the curve of her face, and for a moment I saw not just the child she was, but the woman she'd one day become, kind, steady, courageous. When she stood to leave, she wrapped her arms around me tightly. "I'll try," she whispered. "To be brave. To stay me."